Hey warriors, I hope you're all doing good. So yes, last 20 days of your preparation strategies, we are looking at your May 2025 exams coming in rapidly fast to you. Yes, this is the time for you to start preparing. Let's not say preparing, maybe time to start revising properly for your exams because it's the last leg of 20 days. Yes, I'm here as I am always there to discuss about the focus areas for your tax paper, specifically your direct tax exams, so that you can prepare better for your exams when it comes now. This is definitely not an exam strategy for those people who have already prepared the syllabus properly and are aware about all the topics from an exam standpoint. If you're already done that way, then good for you. Let's not discuss about this. This is more specifically to all my students who are facing a little bit of difficulties in completing the syllabus right now when you have your exams nearby very soon. I want to discuss three things importantly from an exam standpoint. One, what do you mean by selective studies, and what do you mean by smart selective studies? To do that, the first thing which we need to know is what exactly is the exam pattern from an ICA perspective. To do that, we will first figure out what topics are there and how much marks are being awarded to each question when it comes to exam standpoint. Second, focus on what are those areas where you need to be given extra preference and you need to be properly presenting it in exam, basically to tell you how to approach your exam paper. And the third and the most important thing, the topics which you need to be paying special attention to with the last limited time of 20 days. Yes, that is what this session is going to be all about. It looks exciting to me. I'm sure it is exciting to you as well. So without wasting any further time, let's kick in, start and do it together. Yes, great. The first thing, people, to understand what exactly is your paper format. When it comes to direct taxes, 50 marks paper, 30% being MCQs, which means 15 marks are going to be your MCQs and the balance 35 is going to be your written descriptive paper. Therefore, we have to pay special attention to what is happening in the descriptive format first. When it comes to a descriptive paper, people, the first thing which you're going to have is a compulsory question number 1. From a direct tax standpoint, this is going to be your total income and tax payable related question. Predominant focus attention to PGBP, but also keeping in mind your chapter 6, say your tax rates, your other regimes, the combinations which you have in other heads of income, and so on and so forth. Question number 2 talks about your theoretical type question, which is basically your residential status and scope of total income. At the same time, you'll also be asked the point number B, which is going to be your TDS and TCS related question. So 6 marks come from a residential status, 4 marks come from TDS and TCS. Question number 3 is going to be a little bit of a lengthy part of the question, people. You're going to have heads of income coming in the first subdivision and second subdivision specifically focusing on a capital gains related specific question. Whereas question number 4 talks about the easier part of the question, which is your clubbing and set off for 6 marks. And then comes your theoretical question, which is either from return filing chapter, payment of taxes chapter, or your actual theory question from basics of income tax carrying 4 marks. Apart from the descriptive, people, you get MCQs, which predominantly, as per the latest pattern, have 2 case study questions and then individual MCQs. 2 case study questions would probably have 3 subdivisions inside it, each carrying 2 marks. So 6 plus 6, 12 plus another 3 individual MCQs, or you may have 6 plus 6 plus 2 plus 1, or you may have 1 case study question where it is only 4 subdivisions and one may have 2 subdivisions. Any combination works accordingly from an ICA standpoint, people. This is what your exam pattern is. If you understand this exam pattern, people, I think you've already made clear as to what are the topics which are really important for you to pay attention to. And therefore, first let's discuss about how you should be approaching the exam paper before we start discussing on how do we do selective studies. Yes, first, as per my preference, people, when it comes to DT and IDT, it's important that you properly split your subject. It is not that you first need to do the whole DT and then do the whole IDT, or vice versa for that matter. It's important that you keep switching between both the papers, people, because there are some topics which are extremely easy in both the papers and therefore will carry you more marks in the less time efforts. From a DT standpoint, people, my order of presentation is as follows. You always would prefer to start with question number 4 because my gut feeling is a person would have properly prepared for clubbing set off, and the theory question is something which is fairly easy to answer if you already know what topics are going to be requested from. So question number 4 is what I always prefer as a question which students should be able to answer unless you have a problem in the theoretical part of the topic. After you have agreed on question number 4, people, the next question which follows up is either question number 3 or question number 2, depending on where your strength is. If you have question number 2 would demand TDS applicabilities out of you, and therefore if you have chosen to skip a chapter of TDS, I would prefer you opt for question number 3. Although, let's be mindful that question number 2 is something which is far easier and quicker to answer because it's a theoretical topic as compared to question number 3, where you'll have to prepare heads of income and you'll have to go through the tedious process of looking into capital gains, right? So the order of preference here would strongly depend on the preparations which you're doing for your exams. If tedious is something which you're choosing to let go, then question number 3 would be your order of preference. If decision is to let go of capital gains, then question number 2 becomes your order of preference. If capital gains and TDS are both at the downside, then in that case, I would prefer you go for question number 2 because residential status should be easier and quicker to answer. Unless you see the question and the question looks very complicated, in which the safest option would be to go for question number 3A. Yes, so choose your order of preference accordingly, people. Once you're done with this, people, I would strongly advise you to stop writing descriptive. Switch back to your MCQs and first target focus on your individual MCQs, because this is the place where you'll be able to score huge marks with the least time possible. Yes, this will give you the added advantage to complete your syllabus a little quicker as compared to what the descriptive is going to take out of you, especially when it comes to compulsory question. Once you're done with the individual MCQs, people, this target attention would come to your case study MCQ. Here is where you will come and not look into the study first, but rather understand the requirements of the question. Look into that individual MCQs which are given under the case study. Try to find out what exactly is the requirement of the question. Then look at the case study and try to answer it quickly. That is what your case study MCQs would carry. Case study MCQs is something which should be attended in an exam standpoint, people, whether or not you know it, because luckily for you, negative markings are not there. So even if you're in the nick of the time and you don't have time, it is important that you just shade something and give it back so that if at all it works out, you may score some additional 1 or 2 marks, which can really make a difference. Finally, if you have time and if things are going on really well, you will complete whatever is pending of IDT first and then move on to DT part to compulsory take up the question number 1. The question number 1 being a total income question. Now, let's be candidly fair on this fact, people, that it's a 15-mark question and therefore it will take a lot of time. It is not normally humanly possible that everyone would be able to complete the 15-mark question, but even if you're able to do it, 99% of the cases, ICAI would have some tricky adjustments already placed inside it, which means the chances of getting a 15 out of 15 in this question is not impossible, but definitely a difficult and a task. To ensure that is not something which is eating you away, I always prefer to not take this as the first question because it takes a lot of time. At the same time, when you're in the end, the intention is to make sure that you're able to score the maximum amount of marks in this with whatever limited time you have. So please don't fret about the fact that you're not able to complete this question from an exam standpoint. It is not supposed to be completed as well. All you want to do is to ensure that whatever adjustments you're looking into are being answered properly. You're writing appropriate notes here so that you can score whatever good marks you can get in that individual adjustments. Rather than focusing attention on completing this whole compulsory question without putting any notes and giving wrong answers which may carry no marks, pay attention to the fact that you can give some specific adjustments which may give you individual step marks and will elevate your marks when it comes to your CA Inter direct tax and indirect tax paper. Yes. On that strategy, people, is what I would like you to work upon. If you have any challenges, I would strongly suggest you people to go through one mock test paper which ICAI has already launched so that you can prepare your strategy accordingly and see where you're going wrong. Once you're done with all that, people, let's now come to your preparation days. Your next 20 days, what exactly should be your focus areas when it comes to direct taxes? Again, like I clarified, this is more for my students who have not been able to unfortunately cover the syllabus till now and still have other topics to be discussed about from other chapters and other subjects as well. This is not for all my friends who are anyway preparing 100% of the syllabus, because then in that case, I want you to pay attention to that as much as possible. For all the people who are doing the focus topics when it comes to your CA Inter preparations, I have categorized them into 3 buckets: category A, category B, and category number C. Now, this is not your usual ABC analysis, which normally every faculty would do, people, where I would take all the chapters and give it to you in the order of importance. I am actually only telling you those topics which are to be read. Even category C topic is something which I want you to read, but I'm asking you to pay less attention to it because there are less marks and more efforts. Yes, so I am now not coming and telling you about those topics which I don't even feel that you should be reading. Topics like agricultural income, specifically because it is already tested in Jan 25, the chances of that coming in your May 25 is close to nil, and therefore I don't want you to pay attention to those topics. Topics of AMT and all which don't carry much weightage in the current attempt because 10AA and all have come down significantly. I don't expect those questions to be much significant in the current exams, and therefore what you will see is you will not even see them in this current discussion. I am only talking about those topics which really carry marks from that format which we just discussed and the order of priority on how you should be reading those topics. Is that clear? Yes? Awesome. With that understanding, people, let's look at what your topics look like so that we can take it from here quickly. First comes your category number A, where you need to be paying special attention to these chapters, must preparation from your exam standpoint. First, obviously being your tax rate, people, because tax rates are going to be tested in 2 places. One is it's going to be tested in your MCQ format, and the second it's going to be a part of your compulsory question. Yes, so there is no opportunity for you to let go of this, especially with so many changes coming in DTR in the current year, with the tax rate, tax slabs changing, and the benefits being increased for certain items. So therefore, you need to pay special attention to tax rate, people. Two things which come on the top of my head, and you should be paying special attention to. One is what exactly are the changes which is happening in DTR vis-a-vis what is happening in ATR. But the most important thing, your marginal rebate. ICA has not tested this despite this being an important adjustment for the past many exams, and therefore I expect this to be tested in the current exams on a short basis. So marginal rebate is what I want you to pay special attention on, people, because marginal rebate is only applicable under DTR but not applicable under ATR. Second chapter will be your residential status and scope of total income, which, like I said in the past also, people, that is a chapter which I would like you to pay attention to, because whether or not you know TDS or otherwise, if for some reason capital gains does not strike up well for you, residential status will be a savior for you in your question number 2 to get you 6 marks in exam. So therefore, you need to be paying attention to this. Residential status and scope of total income is a fairly easy chapter which should hardly take you 20 minutes if you have gone through my marathon as well. You will not be able to take more time than that, because that is how easy this chapter is. Then comes your salary topic, people, where normally I think everyone has a strong grip on the subject. I don't think I need to tell you what are the important topics when it comes to salaries, but yes, two things which I wanted to pay special focus on in the current year, people, would be your standard deduction increase, which has happened in DTR to 75,000 as compared to your 50,000 in ATR, and your second thing, which is your RFA. People, last year RFA had an amendment where they came and clarified that starting next year, you will compute RFA in a different model by using indexation options. Right, and therefore this year being the second year, the chances of RFA being tested is very high. So therefore, I wanted to pay special attention to RFA, people, specifically on the part on how indexation benefits will be taken for the purpose of computing your RFA salary computation. For those who have a challenge on what does this mean, please go and refer your RTP for May 2025 exams. A beautiful question has been plotted by ICA to come and explain how RFA computation operates. Please take attention to that RTP May 25 and you will be able to understand RTP analysis better. After that, people, comes your most important topic, which is your PGBP topic, which you will be tested from your compulsory question perspective. Yes, this is a chapter which I don't want you to skip at any cost, because no matter how difficult question number 1 is, if you can at least answer some couple of adjustments, you should be able to score a good amount of marks. And therefore, PGBP is something I want you to pay attention to for this exams. There is nothing which I can tell you that it's not important from exam perspective. All adjustments are important. An easy version of how to remember the adjustments is already a part of the cheat sheets, people. So if you have your cheat sheets, please leverage the cheat sheet to the best extent possible. But two things which I wanted to pay special attention in the current year from a PGBP perspective are the amendments which have taken place. Amendment number 1, which talks about how to compute your book profits when it comes to partner salary, because the limits have doubled in the current year. And the second is your NPS contribution, which an employer can do, because now it has a restriction of 14% versus what was there in the 10% in the past. Yes, so these two things which I wanted to pay special attention to. Then comes your capital gains question, people, which is your question number 3B. Now, for those who have already gone through Jan 25 paper would realize that Jan 25 they tested you capital gains more specifically from slump sale perspective, and therefore the chances of that happening in the current year is close to 0. You may get the slump sale in September or probably Jan 26, but a slump sale question coming up in May 25 is very remote, and therefore the important topic which comes up for your current year exams will be all provisions of capital gains specifically to immobile properties. For those who have gone through my classes, people would already know there is a template which we have prepared in order to get the immobile property analysis done in the simplest of the manner, and therefore for those who have that would be able to answer it from that sheet itself. For all the other people, this is what the sections which I am discussing about. First comes your section number 47, which comes and tells you that if you're given immobile property as a gift to someone, then the cost of acquisition is the previous owner. Section number 50C, which says that if you're going to sell your property for less than stamp duty value, you should take the full value of consideration as the stamp duty value unless and until 110% criteria have been met. You have cost of acquisition coming in where assets are purchased before 1st April 2001 or after 1st April 2001. Cost of improvement again where the improvement is done before 1st April 2001 and after 1st April 2001. Section 54, which talks about the exemption series when you sell a residential house property in order to buy a second residential house property. 54F dealing with when you sell something else in order to buy a residential house property. 54EC talking about the fact that if you're selling an immobile property which also includes a residential house property in order to buy some bonds of NHAI and RECL and other notified things. Advanced forfeiture talking about doing any forfeiture which takes place before 2014 to be reduced from cost of acquisition. Indexation benefits in case the asset is transferred before 23rd July and no indexation benefits if it is transferred after 23rd July. And finally, your unexhausted basic exemption limit. your unexhausted basic exemption limit, which comes and clarifies that when you have a capital gains but the normal slab rate incomes is not sufficient to cover your slab incomes, you can use capital gains in order to cross adjust with your basic exemption limit. Apart from that, people, one thing which I wanted to pay special attention to in the current year would be the second amendment of immobile properties, which comes and clarifies that even though an asset is transferred after 23rd July, you will have to compute capital gains as per old provisions with indexation and as per new provisions without indexation, compute the tax of both and check whichever is lower. Please note that that provision will only apply in case the question requests for a tax computation on the capital gains. If the question is simply asking you for capital gains, then the rules which you have read would apply, which means after 23rd July there will be no indexation and before 23rd July there will be an indexation. Yes. Second thing which I think ICAI may test you in the current year if they want to test you on a more theoretical level of capital gains would be all the transitional provisions which has taken place in the current year post 23rd July. There are various instances, people, where ICAI would come and test you saying, if at all, for example, you're talking about bonds and debentures, they were not eligible for indexation even prior to 23rd July, but were treated as long-term capital assets. And later on, after 23rd July, if they are transferred, they are treated as short-term capital assets. Similar to that, there are other items where many cases, like income tax would come and say, before 23rd July, there is indexation, after 23rd July, there is no indexation. But some cases, like where before 23rd July also there was no indexation, and after 23rd July also there was no indexation. Those transitional provisions is something which I would like you to pay a special attention to, because chances of that being tested in the current year exams are high. Once you have completed with heads of income, people, then comes your other important topics, which is your clubbing and set off. Clubbing and set off. Clubbing and set off together, like I said, will be a part of question number 4A, and therefore this question is not to be avoided. This question has to be mandatorily answered from exam. Clubbing and set off are fairly easy topics which you need to know from an exam standpoint, so therefore no excuses on this. You will be completing this chapters no matter what. Then comes your chapter number 6A, people, which is actually going to be part of your question number 1. Question number 1, your compulsory question. Some specific sections which I think you should be paying special attention to from an exam standpoint would be your ATC, would be your ATCCD, your ATD, ATE, G, JJAA, TTA, TTB, and finally the fact that you cannot claim capital gains on you cannot claim chapter 6A reductions on capital gains. You cannot claim chapter 6A reductions on capital gains. These are some ideas which I wanted to pay special focus on, people. Also for the fact that when it comes to CCD, employer's contribution, and JJAA, these are also eligible under default tax regime, especially for ATCCD, where you're now eligible for 14% deduction of employer's contribution if you're opting for DTR, default tax regime, and 10% if you're opting for ATR. Chances of these kind of adjustments being tested either from an MCQ perspective also becomes extremely high this time, and therefore I want you to pay attention to this. Finally comes your return filing, people, and I am really putting this in category number A because this forms part of your question number 4B. If you are going to attend question number 4A, 4B becomes important, and therefore you need to be focusing attention on return filing. Return filing is one of the most easiest chapters from a theoretical standpoint, people, which can be easily covered in just a matter of 10-15 minutes. So you should not be letting go of such a beautiful chapter for your exam to carry more marks. Once you're done with category number A, people, you'll be paying attention to category number B topics, which is your HP related provisions. The easiest lot of your syllabus, nothing significant about HP. I could rather put it in category A also, people, but I know HP is fairly an easy chapter for all of you. Therefore, it is there part of category number B. Second comes your IFOS topic, which this time has some important amendments, and therefore I want you to pay special attention to the first and the most important thing here, buyback dividends. The provisions of buyback dividends which has been introduced in the current year, I want you to pay attention to this, people, more from an MCQ standpoint. Now, I don't have the feeling that it may come for May 25. I rather feel it's a part of September 25 exams, but nevertheless, it's good idea to keep this in mind, because out of the blue, if I say ask you a question, you should be able to prepare accordingly. Second is your 222E, people, the standard IFOS deemed dividend concept, which is always relevant from an exam standpoint. You have to pay attention to that IFOS topic from that perspective as well. Next comes your theoretical topics, people, which means if ICAI does not test you on return filing provisions under 4B, it is one of these questions which ICAI would be testing from an exam standpoint. What are the questions which you should be paying attention to? First, cases where the previous year and assessment year is the same. Your chapter number 1, basics of income tax, will give you the answer to this question. Second would be the first 139 section, which comes and clarifies who are to be filing returns in India based on your slabs and based on transactional limits. As per my understanding, for the last many attempts, this has been a standard question which ICAI is asking, and therefore this will be tested in the current year as well. Pay attention to that part. Next comes your advanced tax computation. The answers of these are like 5 attempts once, and therefore I don't pay much attention to it. But still, if you get a question on 234A, 234B, and 234C, you should be in a position to answer that question. Then comes your TDS related 201 interest question, people. This is more of an MCQ question which I want you to pay attention to. Sometimes when a tedious question has to be asked in MCQ, 201 becomes the order of priority for ICA, and ICA tests you on 201 very significantly, very often, and therefore 201 is something which I want you to pay attention to. Finally, bringing you to the revised return provisions, cases where revised return needs to be filed from an exam, by a person. So that is your revised return topic. Last thing which is left is your category number C, which, like I said, I want you to pay attention to because it comes from an exam standpoint, but it's a choice which you can make and a risk which you can take depending on the volume of the chapter. The chapter of TDS and TCS, because that has a lot of topics to be discussed from an exam standpoint. Some things which I think I would like you to pay attention to because there are amendments in it and may be tested in exam in case you want to do selective study would be section 194 IA, which talks about your sale of immobile property with the TDS rate difference coming in the current year for co-ownership. Second comes your LRS related TCS, people, because last year these provisions were amended but were not tested in exam. Chances of these getting tested in the current year becomes extremely high depending on that factor, and therefore I wanted to pay attention to that as well. Yes, awesome. This is what I feel is my focus attention topics, people, from an exam standpoint in order to do well in May 2025. Now, I don't know how the paper is going to be, and I neither do want to comment on that as well, because for me, all students reading from us do not have to worry about it. If the paper is easy, you're already through and you should be able to crack it in the best extent possible. But even if the paper is tough, you have done tougher papers with me. Your preparations have been immensely better than what any other person has been doing right now, and therefore it doesn't matter whether the paper is tough or easy, because you are going to be one of the people who are going to clear in that. Let's go with that motivation and let's go with that interest for your May 2025 exams, people, because I know you have worked really hard for completing this course. I want you people to come out with flying colors, and therefore a little bit of a push for the next 20 days, a little bit of a sacrifice which would be needed for you to pay attention to this course is something which I expect out of you in the next coming 20 days. Apart from that, you are doing amazingly well in the preparations, and therefore I have no feedbacks on that. Please continue doing your preparations as beautifully as what you have been doing right now, and you should be able to clear this May 2025 exams with beautiful marks and with better intentions of clearing and coming back to finals. Yes, so let's do that appropriately. Thank you, people. Have a wonderful day.